Hello everyone. My name is Inga Stasiulonytė. I am one of the co-founders of Elevating Leadership Institute. And today we're gonna have a little bit of introduction of certain concepts to make sure that what we are able to get into the conversation with more depth, with more understanding. So at Ally, we take leadership and high performance really seriously. Because we're Olympians, we love master and to learn what mastery means in what we do. So we provide practice arena, something but already in our preparation, Adam also mentioned how much we perform in our lives and how little our preparation takes practice for preparation. So we provide that arena at Elevating Leadership Institute, and we are making sure what leadership, what we develop, it does not suck. This terminology is very important to be clear. So we are focusing for the teams who are scaling and for organizations who are scaling, and we practice to win the same as Olympians do, because you cannot show up to Olympics just after one training or two trainings. It is consistent preparation what takes place, and that preparation and practice, it's not just it is structured, it's with the support, and for the reaching higher results, it depends on the team, and the team's performance really depends on the leader's self-leadership. And this is why we see what with high performance with Olympic athletes, often when you go into the higher results, into higher arenas, you have bigger teams to support you. Your practice and training becomes more precise. However, in leaders, what we see is opposite. You expect to have big results. However, your support diminishes because you expect now to give support to others. And we want to bring that knowledge from high performance, from Olympic stage to the leadership area, where we make sure what it is not just any kind of preparation, but perfect practice what takes place, and we provide that structure and systems. And part of that structure and system is high performance scaling leadership pyramid, what we develop and what we learn how to use it in our daily lives. And many leaders say what they feel like. They feel like they're on this practice to win pyramid model, where they're constantly under pressure, under fire. So many things are happening to them. They really need to solve fast. They barely have oxygen to breathe. However, it is the top place, and this is what we learn in sports. It is not a grind place. It is a place when we perform at our all capabilities, at the full possibilities, what we possess. It is light. Usually it is very easy to do. It is something but we already mastered. And throughout programs and training at Ally, we learn how to get to that place where high performance feels easy, light. And you cannot skip those stages, what brings you to that place. We need to learn how to practice to train, what it means to keep developing new ideas, and you have possibilities to experiment, to make mistakes, but don't cost much. Then when we already master a little bit of that process, of that newness, what we develop, we go into the stage of practice to compete. And here we have tests when we have a little bit more consequences, but we still have a really support what gets us to the place where we can show our best and be our best. So today's call, Adam Hjerpe, and he is one of the exemplary leaders who lives by his foundational values and really understands these concepts, what we just shared. In the email, I already shared with most of you his background, being executive in Fortune 500 companies, and also being on board of 2026 Special Olympics USA Games, what's happening next year in Minnesota. Welcome, Adam. It is so amazing to have you here. And my first question would be, after all the accomplishments what you have, what are you the proudest?
Wow. It's great to be here. So thank you for having me. I appreciate that. It's nice to be in front of some familiar faces, old friends, which is a very comfortable conversation, as well as like getting to meet new people. So thank you for the opportunity. Um, on this, I go back and say, what are some of the biggest things as I thought about this and reflected on it? Some of the things I'm most proud of and accomplishments, because accomplishments can be a stack of things that you achieve, but I really look at like what's the underlying piece of that. And I thought I kind of keyed three things, and I thought about, and this goes back to things I learned very young as an individual, and I've said a number of times in my careers as I've made transitions, is what is the impact that I made? How did I actually go out there and help and move something forward? How did I contribute and be a good team member? Then I thought about the learnings. What did I learn? Certainly there's some technical learnings, but also the experiential learnings. And in some cases, you know, you have the pursuit of wisdom or pursuit of knowledge, and then there's the pursuit of wisdom, and they're distinct things. And how am I learning on that? Kind of being that humble, you know, treating myself with grace, and what am I learning continuously? And the third one is really the relationships. Is who did I get to meet and connect with, right? When Maya Angelou says, people won't remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I look at these relationships, much like, you know, we've had for even, you know, over several years, is I look back on these relationships and it's amazing how they come back again and again and again, and the power of those relationships. And I found this, in fact, when we were all getting ready, I'll give you the little story as we got prepared for this. I said this to Inga and Joe because we've had these conversations before, that although we haven't talked for a while, it felt really comfortable and we could just pick up from right where we were. In fact, one of my good friends that does a lot of work with helping people, and we've been friends since we were kids, and he's been moved away since he was a freshman in college. We continue our conversation as if we talk all regularly, but it might be months at a time, it might be a year, but we pick up that same conversation. And to me, it's that power of relationships that really gets to, am I leaving things better than I found them? Which my grandfathers would be very proud that I finally, after how many years, learned that lesson, and I'm trying to apply it every day.
What you mentioned about knowing what any presence what we have, it also makes impact, right? But what kind of impact we need to be aware of, and how can we initiate and lead it? also what you mentioned about what kind of learnings we have and the relationships we build. And my next question for you is, and by the way, after this question, I will open up to our participants. So any of you who have certain questions, please prepare to get the most out of today's call. So my next question for you, Adam, is what do you feel and see leaders are missing when they want to scale, when they want to scale their results in our organizations?
Is what creates scale. And I think we start early on in our careers, and it's how much we can do. And then as leaders, we start to figure out how much can we do by not having a pyramid type structure, but more like a funnel, and saying, I can get more done by being the champion, the supporter, the enabler of a team. And I actually create more leverage of the value I can bring by helping and championing others to make sure that the barriers are removed or the resources are provided, or when the stuff gets a little bit maybe ugly and gnarly, I got to be the first in front of a problem and the last one in front of a success, right? Because that's how you lead the teams. And I think a couple of things is, if I were to write a letter to my younger self and saying, if you want to be a leader, here's some of the things with quite a bit of experience. And I've found personally, I probably learned mostly the hard way and through lots of mistakes, is I would come back and I'd say, always have a coach. And you and Joe and others, I mean, you're Olympic athletes, you know this, you conditioned in this, that even the most elite of business people, athletes, artists, musicians all have a coach, because you need that kind of outside perspective, somebody that's looking at you, not you, that's looking at what you're doing and saying, okay, are you reaching for your full potential? What can I do to give you perspective? The other one I always say, and I've got this actually written up, there's a board over here next to me on these things. And I said, I tell people, I said, it's no problem to do the work that we do to serve people. I just need an all-in commitment and an all-out effort. And the thing I want people to think about is the pain of discipline weighs ounces, and the pain of regret weighs tons. How much weight do you want to carry? And use that as that kind of mantra to say, I got to get up every morning. And you know what? I exercise not because I think I'm going to go out there and, look good and that kind of things. I exercise because I want to be healthy, and that helps my mind. So I think of these things as leaders to say, think of yourself like an athlete. You've got to train. You need to have discipline. You need to think about the facets of your physical health, your mental health, your social health. All of those things help you be a better leader. And then I would tell you, live that under the mantra of a servant leadership. You're there to serve. Hierarchies are not pyramids, they should be funnels. And as leaders, our job is to work for our people, to provide them what they need to get the valuable work that they need to do done. And if you continue to just have that mantra and have that kind of personal humility, and you drive that way, I believe the rest of all the things, they work themselves out.
Thank you so much for mentioning about taking care of ourselves, and then how does that practice looks like to prepare for performance, and especially to prepare our team for performance, and also knowing our role and our stand. Joe, it seems like you have a question.
Yeah, I'd love to just sort of pick up on exactly this topic. Adam, when you and I were working together, I feel like a lot of our calls started off with a conversation about what exercise that we just did. Like, I remember runs around the lake or going for a ride, or and such. And by the way, I should point out to people, Adam has this lovely artwork behind him. When we were working together, just a quick little aside, the background poster behind Adam was a poster of the famous American cyclist Greg LeMond, America's first ever Tour de France winner, for whom Adam was a mechanic. Adam was a bike mechanic for Greg. What I want to double click though on this idea. I think leaders are hearing this idea of self-care. Hey, I should be taking care of myself. Do you have any thoughts, advice, wisdom about what you might share for how a leader might know or figure out or decide how their level of self-care is doing? Is it enough? Are they, over? Is there something that you use to sort of know, like, how much self-care is enough, or am I not getting enough? Where could I be doing more? Where am I missing the mark? I just know that you are taking care of so many people. This is why I'm particularly curious, like, how does Adam Hjerpe know, what is the right self-care, and how can he help other leaders gauge that?
Uh, I appreciate the question because honestly, I don't think I do know in many cases, and I am
Mm.
super fortunate. This is part of this. Last Tuesday, my wife Sue and I celebrated 30 years together. So great 30th anniversary, big milestone for us. We're very proud of that. But I don't know, and I am very grateful that I have her as a partner and as somebody who looks at me from the outside and kind of checks me on these things. So she'll ask me that question. Coaches can do this, but you have an accountability partner, right? You've got friends, you got loved ones, you got partners, you got spouses, but you got that person and you have that conversation with them that says, listen, maybe I don't know when I'm redlining on something or when I'm over the top or I'm not doing well. I really appreciate you for coming and calling that out to me. And believe me, she is a fantastic kind of check for me on so many fronts. But we do these things, and she'll do it with these questions. The other part I have in this is the power of a question is she'll ask me these little check questions. Like,
Uh-huh.
how's your mental health doing right now? And it's usually one of those triggers like, hey, I might be moving it too hard. And one of the things I want to give you, for those of you that have ever done golf, I got taught this by a coach once, and again, the power of coaches. And I've used this with leaders for years. And I tell them up front, I'm going to do this as we come up with this about caring for myself and others. Is I come up with these little kind of innocuous phrases that we can use, which is this compassion and this caring for each other. That if you see somebody not being their best self, or maybe they're kind of going over their redlining, or something's falling down, that you can kind of use that little check phrase is if you've ever golfed. I said, you ever golf? And people go, well, I've golfed before. And I golf. I'm not a golfer. Those are distinct things. But I said, one of the most important things in golf is your grip. And I said, and if you grip the club too tight and you swing too hard, what happens? They say, oh, the ball flies over here and it flies over there. I said, okay, so that's not what you want. And if you hold the grip too loose, what happens? Well, I swing and the club goes flying away, and that's dangerous. Exactly. So it's the idea of how's our grip? It has to be firm enough to hold, yet loose enough to not like white knuckle or over control things. And I've set this up as a little kind of phrase I've done with leaders for years when I see them not being their best self. And I also ask them to do the same for me, is to say, hey, why don't you check your grip? You might be a little loose on something, or you might be white knuckling it. And it's these little kind of breaks, right? And we talk about this in things like emotional intelligence, the amygdala takeover that we have. But you create these little kind of hacks or phrases that says, hey, how you doing today? Maybe you want to check your grip, and people are like, oh my gosh, that's the safety phrase that says somebody cares enough to say something that I need to just stop, create a little bit of space, which creates a massive amount of opportunity for me to maybe reset because I'm probably not being my best.
One more quick follow up to that. We do have one other person on this call who works in paddle sports. And, I wrote a chapter in my book about when I was running a kayak school, that the first thing I would look at, where my eyes go when I see someone kayaking for the first time, it's always the grip on the paddle. Like, I can always see the quickest, like how tightly or how loosely they're holding the paddle. It's almost never too loose. It's almost always too tight. One more follow up to this idea of, now the personal health, how we take care of our people that we're counting on to achieve results. You have been a leader, a senior level leader at United Healthcare, at GE, at these huge, huge companies, where I can only imagine the pressure to get results and to turn results. Everyone knew what their targets were all the time. So, how, as someone who really advocates for the growth of the person and the health of your people, how did you find your own way to kind of mitigate, this between get results, take care of the people, get results, take care of the people. What did that look like for you?
I appreciate the question. I come to this thing and people have asked me like, how do you handle it in these larger situations? I'm like, go back to make the big problem small, break it down and make the problem small, and recognize the things that you've been able to do. You bring strength, you bring capability. It's kind of that as things get more chaotic, just become more calm and settle down and settle in and sharpen your focus. And when you do that and you make the bigger things smaller and recognize I've been able to handle smaller things and I've been able to figure things out and I've been able to deal with problems and adversity, you're like, don't get overwhelmed by the scale. Just sharpen it up. We're going to break it down. Let's get to the small things. And I love this line. I like this line that Matt Damon says in The Martian at the end when he's giving the lecture at the end after he's gone through this incredible trial and he survives. And he said, basically, you just start solving problems and you solve the next one and the next one and the next one. And if you solve enough problems, you get to go home. That's part of that kind of relentless pursuit, right? We never achieve our full potential. We're always reaching for our full potential. But I think if we just slow down, calm down, sometimes that's really hard, is to say, okay, let me solve this problem and then this one and then this one. And the momentum starts to build and you just don't lose yourself. And if you think you are, this is where having an accountability partner comes in as you're like, hey, I'm really digging into this stuff, but can you kind of keep an eye on some of these things? And if I'm redlining or if I'm missing something, can you call it out? And then it's got to be that humility to say, hey, when somebody does this, it's because they care, right? That they bring up the safety phrase because they care. Take it for what it is, and then make some adjustments.
I will open up now floor to questions. I just want to really summarize because what you just mentioned, it is this concept of perfect practice. When chaos comes in, when overwhelm feels so deeply in our body, we used to have this strong grip because we seek for control in this feels like uncontrollable place. What you said is exactly what we train in our institute is we train how to calm down. And I think so what you also said about self-care, the biggest knowledge is also knowing what we don't know. If we are doing too much, if we are gripping too much at the time while we're gripping, we need to ask that question to realize what we're gripping. So you're
Yeah.
already setting up your own checkups, and then you have those people around you who check in with you and see when the knuckles are already turning white. So that's the structure of self-care, knowing what sometimes while we're in it we don't know, and also who can help us to know. And
Right.
so we would also listen, because when everything is moving so fast, our body wants to move fast, and we need to do a complete opposite. We need to
Yeah.
slow down and learn what we should solve, not absolutely every problem in front of us, but learn which problems we need to solve first. How do you realize that?
It's hard. I don't know that I always realize that. I think it's more of a process of learning. You keep going, and sometimes we do these own things like when you're getting caught up in the chaos, you go, what am I doing here? Should be a good your own self check, right? Be aware of your physiology and the things you're doing with yourself. You're like, what am I doing here? I ask this question very often of people. To the power of asking a good question is, so what's the problem we're trying to solve? Are we making it too big, or how do we simplify it? Right? I've had this conversation with our CEO too, and she's come in the middle of us working a hard problem, and she's a finance person. She's very math is kind of her superpower and stuff like that. And I said, I feel like I'm doing my math problems and I haven't reduced the fractions yet. I'm getting there, but I'm still reducing the fractions because I haven't simplified it enough yet. And she said, okay, well, keep on that track. Do you need any help? What support do you need? And I said, I'm still working through that math problem. I'm getting there. I think I'm getting there. And yeah, every once in a while, I've had to go in and say, hey, can you check my thinking? It's this really open, honest, kind of vulnerable way. Now, remember, vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is actually courage to go in there and say, hey, can you check my thinking? Maybe I don't have this. and I get a different perspective or a different insight or some knowledge I didn't have. And that's really a gift to me that I can then incorporate, and I end up delivering better things and always kind of staying humble and curious.
Joel, maybe you have some first questions, what you would like to ask Adam.
Yeah, I'd love to comment here. I have the good fortune, for those who are not aware, the good fortune of having worked in Adam's organization just a few years ago at UHG Optum, and he was my boss's boss. Hello, Adam. How are you? It's good to see you again. Um, but it's really interesting that we would meet in this forum with this particular community because something, through your evolution and growth in your life and career, there's things that really stick out to you. These kind of statements or monikers or slogans and stuff and one thing that really sticks out to me, and Adam has shared many, the guy that you get here today is the guy that we got every day at UHG Optimum, right? Like just a real great motivator. It did not matter what level you were in the organization, Adam was able to relate to you and connect, and that was very valuable. So that's an incredible um, aspect, Adam, of your personality and the way you operate. But one of the things I remember you saying is you can train, you can train and learn and be a pro, right? But what sets the pro apart from the elite athletes are continuing to train and learn, right? And just not stopping at being a pro. And we see that in pro sports and in American pro sports a lot, that you reach a certain level and you just I think the body wears out and the age plays in, but people just kind of reach that point and satisfied and plateau. But those who are truly elites continue to push and go on to do something greater. We see that with Michael Jordan, right? He didn't
Right.
stop with basketball. He went on. He's a hometown from my hometown here, Wilmington, North Carolina. So he went on to he tried baseball, right? He tried golf, all these other things. But what he has really done later in life is to be a philanthropist and really do good and do good in this particular community that I live in, as far as like health care and that sort of thing. So I think it's one of those things that stuck with me is that you're never finished evolving and
Right.
growing and kind of seeking that elite sort of level, whatever that is for you, right? So that keeps me motivated, and I think about that a lot. So I appreciate that, Adam.
Well, you're very it's great to see you, first of all.
Yep.
I hope you're well. Love the decorating in the background. It was very familiar, and being able to see you again. It's been a little while. So you're
Yes.
very kind in your words. Thank you. And it is that. It's people can become pros. There can be lots and lots of pros. There's very few elites. And the elites, like you're saying, in this Yo-Yo Ma, famous cellist, amazing sound, practices relentlessly, is always trying to reach the next goal. You see this in athletics, in literature, in music. You see it in professions like, professionals like doctors, surgeons, things like that. And I think it is that enduring thing of that common thread that all these people are like, I'm not ever done. We're always a work in progress, right? That's kind of the inside joke of being human, is we're always a work in progress and we're never done. So just keep reaching and know that sometimes you're going to stumble and fall. Okay, we fall. And the reason we fall is so we learn to get up again. And that's why I said my most important number I tell people is the number one. It's one thing at a time, one interaction at a time. But it's also this other one I've always heard that says, no matter how many times life knocks you down, the power of one comes in. And it just means you got to get up one more time than life knocks you down, because it will knock you down.
Mhm. I think another thing that we've talked about in this community, or acknowledged, I think that, and I've become acutely aware of this, is how age plays into how you think about yourself and what you do. And I think, and I don't know if it's such an American kind of behavior, but it may be human behavior. We talk about that a lot. Kind of just there's things that are human behaviors and not necessarily related to specific cultures. But I think one thing is this kind of, you retire at 65, right? You work, and then you retire at 65, and then you go have fun. There's a lot of people who adopt that way of thinking, and that's great, right? But I think about there's this series here, and some of you may be aware of it. It's called Masterclass, and it's these iconic Americans who have done great things in business. And Martha Stewart being one of them, who did not start her empire until she was in her 50s, right?
Yeah.
Where a lot of people, that's where I am. I'm 55, right? And for me, a lot of my peers, they're just kind of riding out the next 10 years, right? Let me just kind of hold on and ride it out, and that's fine, right? But then I think I've been struggling with, and in talking to other people, when you kind of actually start to have real conversations, I think a lot of folks are in a position like, well, I don't want to, I want to think about what the next decades hold for me as being a productive, impactful sort of individual, right? So that's always kind of encouraging to me to think about folks later in life who have really kind of hit their thing later, right? Grandma Moses is the iconic one, right? But
Well,
Martha Stewart's our modern version of that.
Well,
Anyway,
Joel, you're definitely exemplary of committing to learning. You changing jobs, coming from some place where you've been for so long and going into completely new ventures and rediscovering yourself. That's tremendous power and the courage, and we are so blessed to support you through the journey and witness that.
wonderful. It really has been. It's helped me a
Um,
great deal.
Heather, what's your comment or question?
Yeah, great. Hi, Adam. I have the good fortune to work with a lot of different people in a lot of different industries and at different levels. And I think it can be very easy for somebody who's committed to high performance to just get in the zone and be in the zone. And, you talked about sort of pulling up from that and asking yourself some questions and getting resettled. What an insight would you have for me, maybe as somebody who's working with some of those people and observing some of those behaviors? What's that that magic phrase, if you will, that can help somebody recognize that, like, the zone is great, but I'm not always practicing to win, right? Inga showed us the performance pyramid. I should spend some time practicing to train. I should spend some time on myself. I should make an investment to connect with those people who can mirror back to me versus just powering through.
right. I would think of this around kind of balance, right? It's amazing how nature shows us and always seeks balance. And when we get out of balance, right, the simple one for me from a cycling background is you ride that bike and you keep moving forward. If you go too slow, you tip over. If you go too fast, you can get reckless and out of control. But you got to maintain that so you keep your balance. Too far to either side, and you're going to tip over. How are you maintaining your balance? Just checking yourself with your balance. It's like anything else. Like you can do this, and I found this is I've got individuals that pride themselves. Oh, I only sleep 4 hours a night, or I'm always busy. I'm like, well, what are you getting done? Like, you've got to be exhausted. Like, how long can you go like that? I could do
Yeah.
1 or 2 nights like that, but you know what? Rest is a really important thing. Eating right's a really important thing. Balancing myself out, I find that I'm much more fulfilled. I'm much more satisfied. I'm not frazzled. And I've been like that, right? And maybe you guys have said that. Maybe that's part of us being younger. Joel said that. Maybe it's part of being younger, comes with age. You start to kind of settle down and you're like, what am I doing here? What am I getting done? And how am I doing it to the expectation I have for myself and maybe others have? And you find that it isn't just about getting on the treadmill and running really fast. It's around what did I really get done? And can I find better ways to get that done? Can I lever myself as a leader by coaching and supporting 20 people instead of just what I can do individually? Now I've got the power of 20 people. Imagine what we can do then if we come together. So there's some things I would say in there is like, gosh, check your balance. Why? It looks like your bike's going to tip over.
Yeah. Right on.
And you
It's funny, Adam, you just reminded me of something we talked about last session, you guys. And I think I might have brought up is that a lot of times when you ask people how they're doing or what they've been doing or how they're doing, oh, I'm really busy. That's a lot of people's real immediate response, right? And
Yeah.
and it's true, right? But it's almost kind of an empty response, right? I'm asking about how you're doing, not how you're
But
feeling about what you're doing. It's like, and so I find it interesting that that's something that we all feel, the recognizing the pressure of getting a lot done, and it's just really busy, and it's kind of a dismissive response that just don't want to kind of explore any further. you know. But anyway,
yeah, and I think I'm also hearing a little bit of, not falling into the trap of thinking you know what you're doing.
yeah,
I mean,
Right.
even if you know what you're doing, right? It's like circumstances are changing, headwinds are changing, you yourself are changing, you're getting more tired, you had some rest, now you're not as tired. And so being in that state of ongoing calibration.
Right. Right. And I found these, I love what Joel said about this thing is people, I'm really busy. And then I'll just, this is the power of a question. You ask the next question, you go, so how's that going? And they're like,
yeah,
oh, everything's good and I'm doing these things. How's that really going? How are you feeling about that? And I find that it might take that second or third question because you care about it. You're curious. I like to learn what people are doing, but I'm also caring enough to say, how's that really going for you? Because I can see some of this. You get the tells, right? Everybody has their tells. And when you see those tells, and we did this, we did a big culture exercise or evolution we did when I was at my time at United. And one of the things is, well, how do you address people that aren't aligned with the culture? They're having these kind of different kind of behaviors. I said, ask them a question. Usually mine is, how you doing? And people have realized they're like, oh, I didn't show up as my best self. I said, I'm just being curious. I care about you. I just being curious. Like, how you doing? Well, how's that going? Is there something you want to change? And all of a sudden it can open up this possibility, right? That's why I like questions because it opens the conversation and the possibility. But all of a sudden people start to open up and they're like, I'm so busy, I'm exhausted, and I'm trying to juggle 100 things. I said, okay, so, well, what could you do about that? I don't have to provide advice. I'm just asking them questions and maybe helping their self-talk a little bit along more as like a facilitator than like I know anything. I can barely keep my own act together. So, but I find that some of that stuff they can come, and I've had people come back and go, that was actually really helpful. I'm glad it was because I've been fortunate enough to have people when they saw me doing that, they cared enough to ask me some of those questions and they got me to think. And then they got me to like internalize and make some adjustments to go, God, I don't need to be this busy. I am exhausted. I'm not really getting done what I want to get done or what's most important to me. I do need to make some adjustments and I got to make some decisions. Okay, I can do that. And then come to find out, after I've done some of that, man, I feel a heck of a lot better about myself. And so do the people around me.
it's like giving them permission to acknowledge it and to yeah, and be aware of it. It's interesting. There's another thing I observe a lot of times with people is, well, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. And it's like, well, I hear the intonation, right? Like, and so if you probe, like, well, are you giving me the polite answer, or how are you really doing? And sometimes it breaks down the barrier, like, yeah, well, not so great. I'm frustrated with X, Y, Z, and so you can stop with the answer, or you can probe further. And I think you do a good job of that. I mean, you just talked about that.
And
Um,
that's
Try and help people unpack, right? We pack a
yeah,
lot of stuff in. What are those kind of nice, good human ways to say, hey, maybe we should unpack that box a little bit?
mhm,
I think that there's something here that is going to be interesting for leaders of different ages that are on this call, or the leaders who are in different stages of their career. I think a lot of what you're talking about, of course, it makes sense. A lot, of course, depends on the culture, for having
Sure.
those kinds of conversations. And I think that I think, if I'm kind of making some wagers about changes in leadership and changes in culture, that's going to go beyond my time on this planet, that I think the conversations that around the health of the people between the time they show up to the work and the time they leave work, that's starting to go away. I think your people are going to be your people on a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year type of mentality, meaning like
Right.
our organizations have to have a whole person interest in the whole person, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but you can't just change from that, because someone isn't just going to start talking about, yeah, having an elderly parent living at home is really hard. Yes,
Yep.
going through difficulties in the marriage is really hard. Having a sick child at home is really hard. It takes time to get into that, but I suspect that if we're really dealing with the health of the whole person and having a culture that accepts that, I think as leaders, we have to start to imagine what that's going to look like for us and the people that we lead. Like, how are those conversations going to happen? It's too much to go into for today. Like, this is something I think about a lot for younger leaders. I think there's
Right.
some really, really good transitional ways to get there. But I think that's going to be a big change in the culture of leadership, not just in the United States, but all over the world.
I think it's a great way to go, a great avenue to go and explore. And as I've found with the responsibility is also just being aware, right, of people and what's going on with them. And Joe, I think you make a great point. It's not, I care about somebody and their kind of well-being between these 2 hours. I care about the whole person. And as much as people say, hey, I compartmentalize stuff and leave it at work, or I bring it home and stuff like that, we're human beings, right? Everything that impacts us affects our whole life. And I've found people in some specific examples where I see them on a certain day and they are absolutely not their best self. And I think that caring approach to go in there and say, you were a real jerk in that last situation, or what do you think you're doing, and that kind of stuff. Coming down on somebody doesn't add from help. But if I go in there and say, are you okay? Why? That was really out of character for you. And I'm just wondering, are you okay? And I have found by and large, they are not. I'm caring for a sick parent. I'm having trouble with my relationship. I'm dealing with something that's complex. You're like, okay, well, let's get you some help. And I'm not a therapist or a psychologist. I'm not a licensed professional, but I care enough to say, if you need some help, we've got lots of things. Usually get lots of benefits, and there's lots of help out there, right? I'm also a big person on, the suicide prevention things. Life can get pretty dark and you may not be able to see it, but help is available. Please reach out for help. That happens so many different ways and different levels and at all different stages of our life. And if there's one message I'd like to get out to everybody is, when we do our own self-talk, it can get pretty dark and we can put ourselves down these holes and stuff. And we may not be able to see possibilities. We may not be able to see options. There are always possibilities and options, and there's always help. Please have the courage to reach out for just the self-awareness. Like, I think I need help. Okay, good. That's a place to start. Let's try and find you that help. It might not be be me, but I sure want to help you find that help.
Yeah, and I think, if I may, Inga, it's coming up for me that I think any person on this call is going to nod their head and say, yes, that's important. And yes, we want to do that for our teams.
No.
Right. And then also accepting it for ourselves and coming into community with other leaders like this, where we can check in on each other instead of just being all out there for the team and the subordinates and the folks that work for us, but to really say, I deserve that too. And to find and invest energy in a community that can do that for one another at that leadership level is really important.
Yeah. It's important. Find your tribe, right? Find your tribe of those people who can be your tribe you can talk to and you feel comfortable with, and who can be your accountability buddies. It's super, super important. We need these support structures. In fact, when Dan Buettner wrote Blue Zones, he talked about these places around the world where people live these long and really fulfilled and rich lives. And one of the things that was most important to the longevity and the health holistically of these people was the connection to other people, right? And they had these wonderful stories about this small village in Japan and all these, there was women that was really this cohort that they'd been in since they were little kids, but they took care of each other and they look after each other until well into their old age. But it's because they had the power of connection and they had their own little cohort. Find your cohort. You're not alone. Go find your cohort.
It's interesting how, Joe, your comments led us to this conversation. What's really interesting from my own experience, I've only been with this new organization, Smith RX. Adam, it's a small, modern PBM, doing great stuff. It's exciting. It's hard. Leadership is very young. My own boss, again, I'm 55. My own boss is 33, right? And it's wonderful. It's because the energy, the perspective, I am learning so much by being surrounded by this young energy. And I recognize that I had kind of fallen into this behavior of kind of we're all aware of the generational definitions, baby boomers and millennials and what they're doing, and Gen X. I'm Gen X, and all this collision um, of definitions of how what the behaviors are like, and the collision of these things. And I tell you, what I've learned is, um, Gen X and millennials are, I mean, Gen X, yes, but millennials and who's coming along are doing some great things and being progressive about how they take care of themselves and how they set boundaries and how they conserve and use their energy and that sort of thing. Whereas a few years ago, I rolled my eyes at, like, dig in, buck up, work hard. It doesn't mean they're working any less hard. They're working more
Right.
wisely. And I think that
Right.
gets back to the thing that we learned from Jack Grapple too, about energy, how we use our energy, like in the same way as how we use our time. So that's something that I'm observing applied in an organization, a young organization, and a young leadership community. And it's really kind of contagious, and it really compels a culture that makes you be a little more vulnerable and open up and easy to talk about. I'm not feeling so great, or my
Yeah.
energy's down. Let me pause for a second, get back to you on that, or that sort of thing. So that's something they're getting right as the younger folks.
It's amazing how you say that, because you think of things like, and my grandfather would say this to me. He goes, "You're smart, but you don't know anything."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't understand what what I meant, what he said at the time. I didn't understand what that really meant, but now I really know what that means. Is you can be smart and you may not know anything. And I do appreciate this. I think this kind of intergenerational opportunity, I don't call it a clash, because it's just, you got people that are digitally native. They've known nothing
Yeah.
else. Gen X has known a certain things, boomers knew a certain, and if you look at it from, okay, what can I bring to the table? And can I be curious as to understand, so why do they think that way? What about that do they think that way? Where's the goodness in that? Certainly I've got perspectives, and yeah, I do things differently, but there's many roads to get to a destination, and just be appreciative that that may not be my road. As long as we get to the destination and the ride wasn't dangerous, I'm okay taking a different ride. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how, with that curiosity, man, I can learn some new things along the way. By embracing that curiosity at any age, I can learn a few things that actually are like, oh, that's a really good insight. And I can contribute things to them, because I know I meet and work with a lot of people that are really smart that may not know anything. And part of my job is, how do I help you know these things, right? Is I can see how it works on paper, but let me
That's
show
right.
you how it's going to work in practice, because the real world is ugly and gnarly and comes at you with really strange stuff. And you kind of got to figure it out.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's a wonderful experience. I'm having so much fun with it. It is kind of amusing, even amusing sometimes, to be like, "Oh, I've been there. I've been through what you're going through, and you'll see your way through." So,
And then creating safe space. One of the fun things we have is just so we start to communicate better together, even through generations and levels and everything else. So we have things like No Filter Friday. Yes, you're going to say it, and it's going to be out loud, and it may be something you don't agree with, and some might say it's offensive. We go, it's No Filter Friday. I'm just going to say it for what it is. So please, take it for the
well,
spirit that it's meant. As I'm just trying to be open and out there. I'm not trying to, put an affront to anybody. And we actually start to have these really open conversations, and we start to learn things from each other. And it's actually kind of fun. And hopefully I see it more that we kind of laugh about some of the things, and they're like, hey, way to go, boomer. And they look at me as Gen X. I'm like, yes, they took my feelings out as a child. I've never seen them since. So yes, I come at things a little differently.
exactly.
It was all from the blatant neglect of the parents who were, boomers who were off doing their thing, and the Gen Xers basically raised themselves, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
our childhood was the game of survivor, outwit,
Yeah,
outlast, outplay. That was basically how we were raised in the 70s and 80s.
yeah. I think my
But then
parents
we
forgot
also
they had
get
a
to
third
see these
child.
other things where there's these really cool things about each of one of our experiences, and there's also some challenging things about those experiences, and we get to share those together. And then we get to learn from each other, and you start to create new relationships that you'll have ongoing.
Yeah,
I
for
just
sure.
wanted to reflect what you just mentioning, which is really important. When we reach certain level of success, we get this grip of, okay, this is the formula how I get those rewards, recognition, earnings. And what you're talking about is
Mhm.
also being open to new definitions, right? This is what
Yeah.
growth means. What maybe there's different ways to get success, and maybe there is a possibility for me to get even higher success. However, for that I need that a little bit looser grip to be curious versus judging. Like, this does not work. You don't understand this world. I've been in already in this situation. This is how you get things done. But maybe not. Maybe there is new
Right.
and other ways to do things. Chris, I saw you nodding certain times. What are your maybe reflections and or questions for Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Ingrid. Yeah, I agreed with quite a bit that Adam shared around leadership and self-care and having a coach, and even maybe having someone else that you can talk to about the stresses that you're dealing with, right? That may not be a career coach. And as you grow in your leadership, it's easy to put yourself on an island and say, I'm
Yeah.
the only one dealing with these problems and I don't know how to deal with them. And you don't ask, right? You don't ask for help, or you don't talk to somebody about it, and it becomes very stressful. And Adam talked about these sometimes you have your own demons, and you reflect and talk negatively about what you're trying to do or what you're doing. And so I would encourage, if you don't have those outlets that Adam has expressed, to find them and get them. I guess my question for Adam, though, is what's one bit of advice when you hire a new leader or bring a new leader on? Like, what is one bit of advice that you give them in their onboarding, their first kind of 2 or 3 days working for you, to help them?
Appreciate the question on this. My advice to them is be a sponge, and the statements that you make, the emails you'll write, the things like that, just end those sentences with a question mark. And the reason I say that is be curious. Go in there with curiosity. You may have great experience. You may know how things ran in your previous world. And I did even take in this new role here, right? Running a health plan. I've got experience running a health plan. I need to have experience running this health plan in this context. So come in and be curious. Start things with a question. Give yourself that room to be curious. Don't end your statements with periods, and certainly don't end them with exclamation points, because that narrows the possibilities. Start them with a question and open things. You might learn a few things along the way, like, how does that thing I know actually work in this context? And you might get some insights to say, hey, that's pretty novel and neat. Otherwise, you might look at it and go, okay, I think I got a bead on where maybe some of the problems are and I can be helpful. But I tell them, just go in there and give yourself the time and space to absorb and to learn, so you can understand not only the technical, but also the contextual of what's really going on. And then go talk to everybody, because whatever you get told, I've told CEOs this. I said, you are so lucky. You're going to get twice as much information and half as much truth. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, everybody wants to give you news, but nobody wants to give you bad news or the honest news. And you need to hear the honest news, because that's where you find the problems that you can go get ahead of. Because if people just come up there and give you, we kind of called it happy ears, and they keep telling you everything's good, we call them watermelons. They're green on the outside and red on the inside. That's what happens to a lot of your things. So go out and find those listening posts on your own. So any information you can get, you can kind of triangulate to figure out, oh, is that really what's going on? Or is there something underneath I need to dig for?
So true, especially about what information we receive and how to open up that understand conversation to realize what problems we're dealing with. Joining the conversation, Ivor, any comments before we close today's conversation?
Thanks, Inga, for asking. And Adam, great to meet you. I work in the healthcare field as well. And but I'm curious on your perspective around, especially in this digital, um, world that we live in, AI world that we live in.
Sure.
There's and hybrid work environments, work from home, that sort of thing. There's so much of almost an epidemic of isolationism and people not being connected, whether it's to your professional or a greater social network. So I'm just curious, where you see the pendulum swinging kind of
still towards that or away from that. And I mean, I think a lot, and Joe and I talk about this a lot too, is living a life where you can get outside and you can be exposed
Right.
to things that you're normally not, and that really lets you live a much more expansive life because you're not stuck in your home office and only talking to the same people. And we know there's like, mental health issues that arise from that sort of thing. So just curious about your perspective in the world that you live in.
You ask very or put out something very deep, and there's lots of facets to it. I think this is an interesting time in our human history around we're more connected than we ever have been, and yet we're more isolated. And I think it's one of these things, and I almost kind of see people kind of moving towards this renaissance, right? People with tiny houses and staying in camper cabins that's very minimalist. Inga and I were talking about her new adventure on owning her home and how she's like, I don't want to have clutter. It's not about stuff. It's not about, I want to go do things. I would encourage people, be that renaissance person. Go out there and put the digital screens and stuff away. I think they're like anything else. They're tools, right? They're tools just like, we used to plow fields with horses and plows, and now we have big tractors and ones that can drive themselves and stuff. But it's almost kind of this renaissance piece of coming back to what is that walk in nature? What is the simpler things we can enjoy in life and connect with another individual? If you haven't done this, it's coming up on the holiday season. Go and visit a retiree home. They'd always love to have volunteers. These are individuals who have lived rich and wonderful lives, and they have so much to give, and they're probably very lonely, and just the other connection of another human being could be so powerful. It's just a little bit of gift of time, and you give it time and attention to somebody, because I think we're all headed there, right? God willing, and things work well, we're all going to get to old age, and it's amazing how we at some point might be isolated. So our gift could be, go make a connection to another individual. Go be a renaissance person and go out for a walk, or go try something, you haven't had the courage to go do something in your community, or join a pickleball league, or try something. Go out and try some of these things. And if it doesn't work, just keep trying, but always keep kind of feeding your soul, right? We spend a lot of times feeding our head and our bodies, but go out there and do some of these things that feeds your soul. And who knows, you might make a new relationship, a new connection, and you certainly could make a contribution that is really, really needed as we get bigger and bigger as a world. And it seems like we're closer together, but yet further apart. There are these opportunities for us to connect as human beings that come from all of these amazing walks of life and live out part of our humanity being connected together. So that's where I'd encourage you.
Wow,
Love it.
Adam, Joe, before I ask you to summarize and close our conversation, in regards also to our performance pyramid, but what was your learning today from Adam's conversation and our own comments? But what I wanted to also comment on what, Adam, you keep bringing up, and what I admire the most in conversation and in presence with you is this constant reminder what our community, what we engage in, it could be very limited, and then can we go and explore different generations, different fields of work, perspectives, and join those communities with curiosity to open up the world, besides what we are so sucked in sometimes in, because we want to be and do the best, and we don't have the opportunities, but also seek for those engagements, communities or people that maybe we don't understand fully yet, and expose ourselves to that knowledge. Thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and speak with you all today. It's been my pleasure.
Joe, last word, and then we will say goodbye for today.
This was so good. Thank you, everyone. I teased out this conversation by using Inga's words, enriching the lives of thousands. And I mean, Adam is going to be leading an effort that is, he's been enriching the lives of thousands for years, but it's really going to hit another level in June of 2026 in the Twin Cities at the Special Olympics USA Games. But I think that last answer there, that last exchange between Ivor and Adam, really hit on what it means and how we enrich the lives of thousands. We do it by enriching the life of one person. And if we really want to enrich the life of one person, it's going to come back to our own connection to self. And that does, when we look at that pyramid that we operate by, that we live by, yeah, of course we want to achieve at the top of the pyramid. The magic is in the lower 2/3 of the pyramid, where we train to practice, where we train to compete. That is where we kind of find it within ourselves to do that kind of work. Adam, what a privilege and an honor to have you here today. And if there is anything we can do, our community at Elevating Leadership Institute, to contribute to what's going to happen in the Twin Cities next June, like, we're raising our hands. Like, we absolutely want to do that for you.
Open volunteers start January 1st. It's 2026, usagames.org. Jump in and support and help. Come out and cheer. If you want to see something that has infectious energy, come out and see one of our events. If you're located around the world, we're in 200 countries. Go out there and connect with your local Special Olympics delegation, their team. We always need coaches and volunteers, and just show up to an event. You'll be bitten by the bug, and the energy will be real.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Please contact us if you want to learn more about our approach to leadership that does not suck. We will start the new guest leaders series from January, and now we wish you beautiful last month of the year and in preparation for the next year. All the best.